So we're changing the X13 blower motor, the constant torque motor inside this AWUF Goodman wall hanging air handler, apartment style. So first things first, we're going to make sure power is killed to the air handler. We'll go ahead and kill the outdoor, just because, just in case. Let's see, this unit was installed in 2021. Sometimes these can be really pain in the butt because, especially the older model air handlers, there's no room to get the blower housing actually out without dropping the coil down, and that's really aggravating. Hopefully this one is not the case. We'll see, but I think it's just, yeah. So the best way that I have found to actually remove this housing, and it's hot as freaking, they've been trying to run this, but anyways, you want to remove the plate that mounts the transformer and the heater contactor, and most likely you will end up removing the electric heaters. Pull this out. There's 4 1/4-inch screws that mount this this area. They mount from up here. There's 4 1/4-inch screws, and then there's 4 1/4-inch screws that pulls the heaters out, and then the only thing that holds this motor is 3 5/16 screws that mount underneath the heater. And there's little holes that you got to feed that screw through. And once you take those 5/16 screws out, this motor housing will drop down, and you can just pull it out. So, but you pretty much got to unwire everything to get started. Since these since this motor is bad, you kind of want to inspect the heater, and we can check continuity, but you want to make sure these heater coils are still good, because if this motor fails and it tries to run the electric heat and there's no air going across these electric heaters, they can burn up. So we'll check that before we reinstall them. So next we're going to remove this this area, and the best way I've found is normally a stubby 1/4-inch stubby 1/4-inch tool, where there's a nut driver or a ratchet. here. I'm gonna have to unwire the line voltage because that wire is actually in the way of that last 1/4 inch screw. Let's see here. So we can just unplug this X13 motor from here and get this out of the way. Get all these wirings out of the way. All this wire, excuse me. So the next step is there's 3 5/16 screws. You can kind of see them right here. 1, 2, the third one's underneath where the terminal block, the line voltage mounts. But you just gotta get a 5/16 nut driver, take these 3 screws out, and this whole entire motor housing will drop down, and then we can pull this housing out. No, that's a nut driver, ain't it? So I like to do the 2 ends first, and then the middle last. All right, can't get to that one, so. And the last one is the middle one. Now when this drops down, you want to make sure you're going to be careful not to damage this coil. Oftentimes you have to kind of like pick up on the motor just a little bit so that screw doesn't get into a bind. But there's that last screw. So see, I have my hand underneath the motor because once I get that last screw out, that last screw can be a little hard because once you get the 2 corners out, the motor kind of gets in a bind, or the housing kind of gets in a bind. So you want to kind of pick up on it. So that screws out. So this housing should come right out. bring it over here in the shade. This shaft does not look rusted, so spray a little bit of penetrating oil on it. Loosen this nut. These look like 3/8. Nope, 7/16. There it is. Much better. You want to make sure you get the washer, the locking nut right there, or the locking washer. Hopefully this motor just pulls out. Yep. Now if that shaft was rusted, we'd be sanding it down. And oftentimes you gotta put a hub puller on. Let's look at this blade. It's not bad. All right. Now we got to get the, I call it a belly band, but the mounting bracket. It's got to loosen up. Now, one thing I didn't go over, I've done this so many times, but you want to make note on where your wires are on your motor. So on this particular motor, it was mounted like so. So typically, if you're new to changing motors, you got a Sharpie, you know, just make a little line on where your wires were. If you don't have a Sharpie, take a flathead screwdriver and scribe the metal, just so you know, because when you wire it back up, you don't want to have to you don't want those wires to be short, and you have to take the motor back out and change the way it mounts. And also make note on where the belly band actually mounts to the motor, because we're going to get as close to that as possible on the new motor. So you have the screw pretty much in line with the wires, and it's on the mounting bracket mounts to the upper third of the motor. So I'm going to get the bracket, the belly band, right into this area on the new motor. New motor, belly band, get your feet. These feet have little grooves on them where it goes on the belly band, so you want to make sure the belly band is in those grooves. If you can't get them all, tighten the belly band just a little bit, and then take a screwdriver and just kind of knock it up. So you see how This one's mounted good. This one is not, and this one's not. It's kind of falling down. So go ahead and tighten up the belly band. I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 turns, but make sure it's not like completely tight. And then take a screwdriver. You don't want to hit too hard, but knock those feet back in place. Just like that. So those feet are in place. We want to slide the belly band up just a little bit. And now we're ready to tighten this belly band all the way, this mounting bracket. Just tighten it all the way up. So all right, we're tight. So remember, make sure your wires go wherever you scribe the motor. It doesn't matter where your shaft is right now. Sometimes you got to kind of wiggle it back and forth a little bit. If that doesn't work, oftentimes you got to come back to the set screw and loosen it. You don't want to lose that set screw. All right, so we're pretty much in line with where the old wires were. So we're going to take our screws, make sure the washers are on there, and tighten this. Tighten the motor, tighten the bracket. Same thing. We're not gonna get it all the way tight just quite yet, but you're gonna pretty much get it to where you just gotta make it another turn or two. I don't like using a drill for these or an impact. Sometimes you can get them too tight. All right, now we got all three of these pretty much tight without cinching down. You want to give all of them one final tighten. Now we want to line up our set screw on our fan shaft. So you want to make sure this wheel is pretty much in the center. What I'm looking at is the space. The space like right here, make sure it's about the same. So go ahead and hand tighten the set screw on the flat part of the shaft. You take your adjustable wrench, just give it one little tighten so this blade doesn't move. Give it a little turn to make sure you're not rubbing on anything. Now we're gonna one more final tighten of this set screw. Now we're ready to mount this motor. First things first is we're going to get the motor pretty much in place. So we know we gotta put our, first thing we gotta get our 5/16 screws back in place. So I like to do the middle first this time, so I don't have to hold it up entirely. Or I don't have to hold it up too long. Okay. Now we're in place. Here, I'll show you. Let's see if I can do this again. So, a magnetic tip helps. So, see if I can get it on first try. Negative. I'm going to get my ladder and kind of stand on it so I can see. Where that hole is. There we go. All right, that screw caught. So we're going to go ahead and tighten that one up. So now we don't have to hold this motor in place. It holds itself up. So if you did one of the two screws on the side, one of the sides falls down. That's why I do the middle one first. Second one is in. All right, my motor is mounted. Next, we're going to mount this terminal block. I was using these gold screws. All right, now that's in place. We're gonna get our stubby nut driver, and we're gonna mount the electrical back in place. Now remember, there was 4 1/4-inch screws that held this in place. So I like to do one on each, like one at a time on the opposite side. So I'll do the hardest one. Actually, do one of the ones on the front first. So again, it kind of holds its spot. It holds itself in place. I just dropped one of the screws. Don't really know where it went. It's like it went into oblivion. That's not a big deal. I got more of those. Oh, there it is. Dang, it sounded like it fell a daggum country mile. That screw's kind of started. So I'll go ahead and start this one as well in this corner. And that's kind of sitting in place. Tighten. All right, that's mounted in place. So now we're heater just slides kind of right in. There's a little hole that it sits in back there. Don't remember where they were grounding the motor, but we want to make sure it's grounded. So I'll go right here. Because why not? Plug the heaters in to the contactor. Check. And then we gotta get the contactor power to power the heaters. Okay. So everything's wired back up besides the motor itself. This male and female ends kind of only go in one way. But if you look at this plug that comes from the motor, and look at these, the power that comes from the transformer in low voltage, there's one blank spot. You see that? So that's the way it's going to plug in. I made a click. It clicked. Now we're ready to test. So go ahead and plug the disconnect in. We're going to turn the heat air handler 30 amp breaker on. And we got a fan motor running. There, the heat turned on. So we're going to put our amp clamp right there. Heaters came on. When I do these, I like to put the door on first. And then I'll put the disconnect in. Then I put my screws in. Just like that.